Welcome to Human Machine Relations. This is the podcast that explores how people and technology are shaping the future of work, creativity, and communication. In this episode, I'm joined by Stuart Cording. He's an electronics engineer turned technical content expert with over 25 years of experience. Together, we'll get into what really matters in technical communication: accuracy, relevance, and storytelling, and why those things are far harder to automate than other workflows. Without any further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, so my name's Stuart Cording. I'm an electronics engineer by education. I worked for around 25 years in the semiconductor industry and the electronics industry before sort of being interested by what was going on in marketing. When I grew up, I was always interested in electronics. It was clear that I wanted to do something in that space, and my whole educational period, school and university, I was collecting information through magazines, especially hobbyist magazines. There were lots of those about, and that got me focused on the idea of communicating about electronics and sharing it with other people as part of a community. And marketing proved to be a pathway to be able to do that. So after several years doing marketing type roles, I found my niche, which was as a technical content creator, not only writing articles and white papers and blog posts for my employers and then later my clients when I went freelance, but also creating videos as well.
So, you've come from a full spectrum, really. You're quite unique. You've got this in-house content team experience, agency content team experience, freelance writer, freelance journalist, and editor. You've done everything basically, and that gives you really, I would say, a lot of perspective and experience. So, thank you, for sharing all of that with me. When you think about how content specialists operate now compared to, say, 3 years ago, how has the advent of AI changed things?
Well, I think it's come upon us in several stages, and some of those have been invisible. And I'll start with Grammarly. When I started writing content, I was sort of unsure of my skills as an English writer. I'd written plenty of stuff and people seemed happy with it, but I'm one of those people who likes to try and improve all the time in whatever task I'm given. So Grammarly was a tool that I installed quite early on and used that to ensure that the spelling was correct, so grammatical constructs were correct. And I'm no expert in that space. However, I look at Grammarly and use that to understand, get a feeling of whether I'm happy with the suggestions it's making to improve my structure. Oftentimes, it's the first bad draft is where you start, and you end up with sentences which are meandering or maybe confusing when you go back and read them. And of course, Grammarly is an AI-based tool. I'm not sure if it always was, but it definitely is today.
Yeah, it is now.
That's the first point I would say, is that AI has sort of come from behind and suddenly appeared in the workflow without us really thinking about it. So that's an AI element. And then, of course, ChatGPT came onto the scene. The first attempts to use that were to really just to see if it was good as people were promising, and the promise was, hey, this is going to create content for you, this is going to write for you. And in our domain, which is deep tech, engineer to engineer communication, where accuracy is absolutely important, we can't make any mistakes with regard to requirements and specification information, units, numbers, et cetera. So really wanted to sort of try it out and see how skilled it was, and it was absolutely terrible. It was very easy to confuse, trip up, and at that moment in time, it was questionable about what use that tool would be. But over time, as everyone's found out, I think it's improved, and we've also got a wider array of tools on the market. So I would say today, where we are, we've got ChatGPT, which I would use very much for research when Google fails me, and Google often fails us in our space because there's so little deep information. Yeah, so you really want to have some really good sources of information to be really sure, about the units, about the numbers, about the performance, and that's got to flow into your document to make sure it retains the trust of the reader. And the other one I use heavily is Notebook LM, which allows you, for those who've never seen it, allows you to put lots of resources in, and that's PDFs, that's documents, that's also links to websites and YouTube videos. And through that, you can synthesize a lot of data and information. It will find the sources for you as well. If if you can't remember where you read something, it will say, oh, that was on this website or in that PDF on that page. And that's critical as well, because as I research, I used to collect lots and lots of tabs. I still do in my browser, but I knew I'd read something as I was writing my document, but I could never remember 100% exactly where I'd read it. And of course, you want to be accurate. You don't want to be twisting the truth or twisting a statement out of line from its original meaning. So you want to go back and actually read it again and take stock of it and say, right, that's what they meant by that statement. And maybe I've got it completely wrong and it's irrelevant then to my piece, but I want to be able to go back and check that properly. And Notebook LM has really become a mainstay tool to help me do that.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of the future of where it's going, do you believe that this change is a change for the better or for the worse?
I think overall it's a change for the better, but not for everybody. So I think specialists like ourselves can work more efficiently. I would say you could probably save an hour or two sometimes on writing a blog post. So if we're talking about something 800 to 1,000 words, that would typically require me around 6 to 8 hours to write. I might be able to shave off an hour, maybe two, depending on the topic. But of course, it also depends on what your previous knowledge is in that domain before you even get started.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit of a time saver. I have on occasion used ChatGPT to actually create entire texts. Again, keep trying it to try it out. Try out different writing styles as well. I had a fad with the New Yorker recently. I wanted to watch a documentary on the New Yorker, and I was interested by the writing style. I bought a magazine, and then I thought, well, let's see if we can get ChatGPT to apply this to one of my technical articles, just to get a feeling of a different way of expressing myself and communicating a point.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to all of this, regardless of whether these tools are there or not. I still believe strongly that we're storytellers at heart, even with these really, really dry topics. You've got to have a compelling hook. You've got to be able to reach out to the reader and introduce these topics using a scaffolding that they're feel is appropriate and that they can relate to, and then you can start to build on top of those things and create your story arc. So I think that's
in PR it really comes down to the why should anyone care about this. And in marketing as well. Yes, you're selling business to business, but you still have to make your case and you have to put it in the context of the wider market, what's happening. And I think that that's also a really big challenge for B2B technical marketers and PR practitioners, is that the subject matter experts or the engineers often have really tunnel vision, and they say, well, this is the next product and this is what it does. But okay, why should anybody care? What's it going to do? And that's where the storytelling expertise comes in, and you can't really you can prompt and you can guide AI to help you around that, but it's still got to come from a creative place I believe.
Yeah. And I think on that point specifically, just before we sat down to talk today, I did use ChatGPT to just, I gave it some basic details on a particular topic. It's connectors. Connectors are one of the worst things, along with wires and cables, to write about, because there's just no depth to it. There's just not very particularly interesting. There can be interesting elements, and those interesting elements often come out of case studies and
the applications,
stories.
Maybe.
The stories people can say to what went wrong in a particular situation and why their connector choice saved them, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So if you ask ChatGPT to write something, it's every other paragraph mentions the name of the product and the supplier. and it doesn't make for a particularly compelling read. It's quite flat and bland. I mean, there's nothing technically inaccurate in what's there, but there's lots of filler words, lots of descriptors in there, and it doesn't, it just doesn't feel very interesting. And I think this is where the reason why I don't think we're ever going to be 100% replaced by ChatGPT, and anyone thinking that it's possible, I think is going to have a bruising time in the future. My feeling is, I mean, firstly, ChatGPT is always 6 to 9 months behind human knowledge anyway. It's also questionable where that human knowledge comes from, especially in our domain, which is relatively niche compared to everything else. If you're doing writing about travel, for example, there's infinite sources for travel information, flight information, tourist information at particular locations, and that sort of thing. And you can put together something relatively compelling, I'm sure, with ChatGPT with little effort and maybe touch it up. But in our space, I don't think that's really possible. And a lot of the stories, a lot of the knowledge that's relevant for now, bearing in mind, we just have to take one step back there and say, we are working with our clients on products which will come to use in the next 12 to 36 months, or maybe even later. So there's a development process that's going on, and those products then come out when they're finished another sort of year later, once everything's been refined and gone through the whole manufacturing process. I can only find out that sort of information by talking to people who are currently talking to other people, engineers, who are developing those applications. So the next generation of car, the next generation of washing machine, that's all going on now, and that's not going to appear in any written material that ChatGPT can learn from for another 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely.
So my feeling is, in our industry at least, what we should be doing is doing more video interviews. We need to be talking to the people who are at the coalface, getting their stories, getting their knowledge and insights as it is today, because that's 3 to 4 years forward. And that's also our value add in the whole process. Yes, we can find everything that's on the website and read the data sheets and the specification manuals and application notes and case studies and all the rest of it. But to find out what's truly happening and what's truly going to come, that's only going to come through talking to people.
Yeah. And, you touched a little bit on the, does it actually save time? And I think that it just changes the workflow. And you said that it maybe saves about an hour or so, and I 100% agree with that. But you're looking at a piece of work. If it's a 1,500-word technical article, that this may take you, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 hours in total. So it's not really a huge amount of time saving. And I think that probably a lot of people who are not content experts, not writers, don't really understand that it's just changing the workflow. It's not necessarily saving time, and it's all about this human in the loop, editorial, curatorial role that we have to step into now in a like a lot more editorial way. Do you think the same?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. I think the problem we're facing with the sort of statements we get from the tech bros out in California is that, there's this percentage saving of time, and the first thing people think of is, oh, that's cheaper then. And it's not. That percentage saving of time means that we're able to maybe do things that we weren't able to before. I don't think we can really write content as primary content creators any faster than we can today. It takes time to think, it takes time to put finger to keyboard, to formulate a story. You want to review it, you've got to look at it and the nuances, and you want to make it, like say, a compelling read. So that 10% saving, or the hour saving that I might have, what that actually does is not necessarily save time, but it might actually lead to a better outcome, because I've then got a little bit more time to be more creative, research more relevant sources than I perhaps had time for before. I'm still, if we turn it into days, if you're doing sort of if you're writing something for 10 hours, it's 2 days, and if you're writing it for 12 hours, it's 2 days. Yes, your delivery date is still going to be in 2 days' time. So and also being a creative person as well, just because you've got another hour spare doesn't mean you're going to invest that in the next thing, because of the energy it takes to create and be creative. You need time to think, you need time to deliver and process all of that. And it's not like working on a conveyor belt. It is more like being an author, a famous author sort of thing, and having that room for creativity in your brain. So the hour or so saving isn't turning into a financial reduction.
Absolutely.
Probably leading to better content, I think.
Yeah. And do you think that, what happens in the next 5 years or so, 3 to 5 years? I mean, it's so hard to predict, because I think that the speed that AI is developing and its capabilities of what it will be able to do 5 years from now, it's quite hard to predict. But I'll ask you to have a look in your crystal ball and tell me what you think.
Well, I think there's two things. I think the first thing is, what will these LLMs and the AI technology enable? And that's one path. And the second path is, what path do we want to take as content creators and as marketers to leverage it in order to be successful? And I think on the first path with the LLMs and AI generally, it's clear we're going to see continuous improvement. I don't think we're going to see any leaps. I think the leap is behind us now. We've seen the big jumps. It's going to be refinement and new ways of using those tools. So, like I said, there's a difference between LLMs such as ChatGPT and Mistral and Claude and Notebook LM. At in the back end, they're more or less the same sort of things running underneath, but the interface to them and how they're pre-configured to be used is different. So I think we're going to see new tools coming onto the market, and that sort of overlaps a little bit in, what do we want to set the course to be with these tools? And I strongly maintain that the most important thing is that keep the human in the loop. Go out there and record people's stories, create that, and feed those transcripts and the resultant material you create out of it into your own library, your own database of material. And then over time, you're going to be able to use these tools to effectively leverage them to create more content. I mean, I think one path is to, obviously, to collect this database of interviews, and then when you're writing something, or you're getting people to write on your behalf, you give them an LLM interface and say, look, you can research all of this stuff that we've collected over the years, all of these interviews, all this historical progress, and pull all of that out and reference it, because that's the other thing for marketing purposes. You want cross references, you want good SEO, you want backlinks and all that sort of thing, or links to other material. So you'll be able to do that much more effectively than you've ever done before. And another thing is, I think, in the world of publishing, in B2B publishing, publishers would be well placed to place LLMs in the hands of their audience and say, look, you can research and even create your own ChatGPT type articles.
Financial Times has just done that.
Exactly, by linking in to all of the material we have, and then I think there's possibly a new path there where you start to create content designed to support, to be as an input to ChatGPT. Yes, it's written so humans can write it, but if we take all the press releases, for example, every time a press release comes out, you start to gather all the information about some resistors and capacitors and microcontrollers, wherever it might be, and then people can come to your website and say, provide me I'm looking for this for a microcontroller for this type of application. I know it's going to need this sort of performance. Please review all of the recent product introductions of the last 6 months and make some recommendations for me, or create a little report for me.
Some people might argue that the real value in technical content was never actually the writing itself, but also the added bits that go on behind the scenes. So like the knowledge that goes behind it, getting the relevant information out of subject matter experts. I mean, interviewing those guys is a skill in itself. And managing media relationships, obviously the PR side of it, having the marketing expertise to know about, SEO and how that works, and now also GEO and how that works, the editorial contextual judgment that goes along with editing all the content. That's, like that's the full Monty, the full picture of what goes on. It's not just about writing or, being an engineer or being a writer. So how do you frame that value proposition? Because we can see that AI is kind of commoditizing content creation. How do we make it more obvious what the value is of what goes behind the content creation?
I think that remains an enormous challenge, and it's never been
Mm,
easy. And I don't think it's going to get any easier. My struggle in the B2B space is that if we just sort of take a step back to the introduction of the internet and all of the tools that we have around social media and social media listening and all that sort of thing, in our space, there is only a really fine subsection of the industry who is big enough and has the resources to actually be able to invest in those tools and get statistically relevant information out of it. Everybody who's under that, it really is just best practice and a
mm,
feeling. I work with a very small company. It's 10 people. Looked at some of their blog posts, some of their LinkedIn results the other day, and their average view numbers are somewhere between 50 and 150 views per post, and a couple of likes and the odd comment
mm.
here and there. And one of them is 6,000 views. I have no idea where that's come from. But and what does that actually tell me? And if I've got a tool, a listening tool or a social media tool, what's that going to tell me as well? I think the most important thing is unless you're at a size where you've got statistically relevant data and these platforms can actually deliver you proper results, and you're very integrated and you're very process oriented and have a flow, you really just have to sort of read the books and implement things as they are, and just know that having a presence and being there is good, and that the agencies that you're working with know who to talk to. They know which
Mm,
magazines are relevant. They know how to create a noise. They know how to sell a story to a journalist. And all these things are positive and good. If you want more than that, then you've got to invest more time, more energy, and more
or
money.
budget.
And yeah, exactly. There's always money
Yeah.
because no one can really draw the line between what's been spent and the outcome. A
Hmm.
lot of what B2B marketing is about is really brand. It's really about making sure people associate your brand with a particular type of product or a type of service that
Hmm.
has a certain value, is reliable, that other people have trusted. So if you're going out and doing those things, you're already punching above your weight, I think. So I don't
Yeah.
think that side of it really changes.
Well, we started off with how things have changed, and I want to end off by asking, is there anything about generative AI that you think that the industry, so when you think about agencies, clients, freelance writers, even professional bodies like, for example, the CIPR or the Chartered Institute of Marketing, is still fundamentally getting wrong or not talking or doing enough about when it comes to AI?
I think the fundamentals are really on the training side. I've talked to lots of people of late about AI and AI tools, and it's a mistake of mine is making the assumption that everybody understands them the same way I do. I
Mm,
have the benefit, obviously, of not only knowing a little bit about how the software and the algorithms work, but also understanding the chips that they run upon, and the
absolutely.
full chain right down to
Yeah.
the registers in the processors and the interconnects to the memory and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and you know you lots of people have a feeling that because they've heard all these stories on from the tech bros, and they've also heard what sort of, let's call it, mainstream media shares about what these people say. People generally, I think, have a feeling that these things are almost alive, and can be trusted to a relatively high level. And I think we would do well to have training programs in place that allow people to explore these things, by giving them examples, things they can type in and understand that in a room of people, 10 people are going to get 10 different answers to the same question, that you can easily trick and fool an AI tool to give you an answer that's incorrect because it's trying to please people all the time. And go sort of, I think that's one part of it is training and getting people to understand that, but and also unfortunately be boring and realistic about what AI is actually going to do in a PR client relationship. You know, what's really possible.
Yeah, I think that we definitely haven't been, sort of talking about the regulation side enough, and the transparency side and the data protection side. There's so many aspects to what needs to still happen because obviously it's such a new thing that everybody's still sort of feeling their way around it. And it's very tempting just to run with it. But I think that we definitely need some more boundaries around it. And of course, each country, each company has their own ideas about what they think that those boundaries should be. Some think there shouldn't be any, and others think that it should be much more regulated. So it's going to be all about finding the best way forward, and hopefully, not creating a monster that we can't put back in the box.
Yeah, I think that's the most critical thing, and I think the monster or the Pandora's box has been opened, isn't it? We were losing skilled and capable writers in the pool, because these tools have come onto the market, and it's inevitable. It's the same as the spinning jenny. The spinning jenny came onto the market, and lots of people lost their jobs as sewers and knitters, and the automobile came onto the market, and lots of horse owners lost their income and everything that hung under that industry. So it's one of those big changes, and it will right itself over time. I think unfortunately for individuals, it's a case of figuring out how you're gonna bridge the gap and carry on. It's worrying as well, obviously, because these things happen. As these things happen, young people think, well, there's no point going into journalism, or there's no point going into writing because it's all going to be done by ChatGPT.
Yeah, and that worries me as well.
Yeah, so there's a long-term issue there as well. But we've faced this before as a society, and we're facing it again now. It's just it's our job to deal with it, not our forefathers.
Yeah, and that's why we've got to keep talking about it. And I do my I'm good at banging drums, so I'll just keep doing that then.
Exactly. Yeah.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much to Stuart for your expert insights that really help us to reframe how we should be thinking about AI in content creation. What stood out to me is confirmation that AI doesn't actually shorten the work, it just changes how the work is done. The research part might be faster, the drafting a little bit easier, but the critical thinking, the checking, editing, crafting the story still takes time if you care about what you're doing. In many cases, that extra time isn't being saved by content experts, it's just being reinvested into making the content better. Perhaps the most important takeaway from this episode is that the more AI commoditizes content, the more valuable things like original thinking, person-to-person conversations, and human perspectives become. Do you agree that AI is helping to improve the quality of content, or is it just increasing the quantity of what gets put out there? I'd like you to share your experience of what your organization is doing with AI in content creation and what you believe the right approach is. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, follow the channel, and share. That's what really helps independent podcasts like these to succeed. Next week, we'll be turning our attention away from content creation and look at some other aspects of how AI is changing the way we work more details to follow. Until then, thank you so much for listening. And remember, the future isn't just about what machines can do, it's about how we choose to work with them. Bye-bye.